there's this huge machine working to undo America. Antifa is one part. You have big money, you have organized nonprofits, you have student groups, all of it working towards the goal of revolution.
All right, welcome back to Fill in the Blanks. Today, we have an extraordinary guest, Andy Ngo. Now, Andy is a New York Times bestselling author of Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. He is also an independent journalist and photographer who fearlessly delves into the world of American Antifa and the militant far left. Now, his reporting and expertise have put him in the crosshairs, and he lives under constant threat. Some of these threats have come true for him. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's not all. Andy's impact extends far beyond the written world. He has testified before the United States Congress, lending his insights to critical discussions. Now, you've probably seen him on countless television shows, heard his voice on radio programs, and even caught him on various podcasts. His journalism has graced the pages of prestigious publications like the Wall Street Journal, New York Post, Newsweek, Fox News, National Review, and now as the editor-at-large at the Post-Millennial. Andy continues to shine a light on the hidden corners of our society. I call it the tyranny of the fringe. So I want you to join us as we do a really deep dive into the stories that matter, challenge the status quo, and explore the uncharted territories of truth. So welcome, Andy. I really appreciate you getting back with me. We were on my stage not too long ago, so I'm glad to talk to you again.
Thank you. I'm honored to be on and to have this privilege to speak with you, Dr. Phil.
You've got a lot going on. You always do, and I'm really tickled to death that you have written Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. And I would like to start talking about that to begin with, because I don't want to run out of any kind of time. Tell me about this book and why you wrote it, what your inspiration was, and let's just start talking about that.
Dr. Phil, you wrote a book recently about the tyranny of the fringe, and there are many fringes, political extremes that exist domestically in the United States. Unfortunately, some of these movements organize into violent extremism, and my book, Unmasked, focused on one particular movement that has wreaked a lot of violence and misery and injuries on the American public. That movement, it calls itself Antifa. They claim to be anti-fascist, but that label is a misnomer. Their tactics use violence and intimidations, killings if need be, property destruction, vandalism, with the goal of silencing their opponents by any means necessary. Now, they claim that their opponents are fascists, but they go after journalists, they go after regular conservatives, they go after women who speak up about women's rights. Anybody who they politically disagree with is labeled a fascist and is therefore subject to be targets of violence and injury and worse.
So who are these people?
It's a movement of people who organize under an ideology of anarchism and communism. One of the tactics that they use is called Black Bloc, and that's where they dress head to toe in black, cover their faces with black masks, and gather for ostensibly a public demonstration that almost always devolves into either brawling with people that they want to fight and to injure, and setting buildings on fire, attacking police stations, injuring police officers. In 2020, after George Floyd died, that was their propaganda moment to really embed themselves into larger protest movements in the United States. And they were able to agitate for riots that happened in Minneapolis, in Portland, in Seattle, and so on from coast to coast. The people who are involved are typically young people, looking at Portland, Oregon, where I'm from and where I did my reporting at the time, that there were about 1,000 people who were arrested over months and months of nightly riots, really violent riots, might I add. And the demographic that I can pull out based on the arrest data is these are young adults, typically in age from 18 to mid-30s. There's a split representation of male and female. Most of them are white. They claim to be protesting for Black Lives Matter. Often the businesses that they target are businesses owned by Black families and immigrant families. So their whole movement is based around deception, from the name to what they say they fight for. And I think part of the reason in the success that they've had on a propaganda level in the mainstream media and legacy media, because if you look at the legacy media reporting, either through broadcast television or newspapers, these people are described as racial justice protesters or anti-racist protesters or even social justice protesters. And that really is giving into the deception that is part of their propaganda. So my book seeks to unmask their activities, their ideologies, their origins, and how dangerous they actually are. And in addition to my writings, I was on the ground for many, many years in Portland, Oregon, which is really the epicenter of their organizing. And I went out, recorded with just my mobile phone or GoPro, because I wanted the public to see for their own eyes what the videos and photos capture. You know, it's one thing if you don't believe my interpretation of events,
Right.
That's fine. You don't have to follow my writings, but watch the videos. The danger of Antifa is that they create an environment where political violence is normalized under causes that sound quite noble. And so the violence happens in front of us, in front of the American public, and people don't recognize it because misreporting in the media, journalists like myself who are out there with videos and photos are beaten and robbed. In 2019, in downtown Portland, I was severely beaten by a group of mass Antifa members, all in black. They surrounded me, they robbed me and my equipment, they punched me repeatedly in the face and the head, to the point where I was hospitalized with a subarachnoid brain hemorrhage, which is bleeding on the brain, and I nearly died from that. And they repeated violence against me again in 2021. Unfortunately, there are very, very few journalists in the United States who are devoted to this beat of covering Antifa. And because if you do, you're subjected to threats, to violence. People can show up at your house. So it's a very dangerous subject that I cover, but I do it because people don't realize how dangerous this movement is. They can be so destabilizing without actually changing any of the laws. For example, like in Portland, we still have a First Amendment in Portland, Oregon, but if you create an environment where, let's say, Christians who are holding a worship event in public, Republican voters who are holding a rally, or women who are protesting for women's rights because of transgender ideology, and these are all examples that have happened in Portland, these rallies would be subjected to violence from Antifa and police don't respond. So it creates a culture where people then eventually silence themselves, because if you organize in public, if you engage in your First Amendment rights, you could be subjected to mob violence and police will do nothing. Nobody will get arrested because nobody can be identified. I've been a victim of Antifa's violence repeatedly over the years, and unfortunately, nobody's been arrested, much less prosecuted and convicted for any of these mob beatings.
A lot of my viewers, a lot of my listeners are hearing a lot of what you're saying probably for the first time, certainly at the detail level that you're talking about. And this may be old hat to you, so bear with me here, because we have a chance to educate a lot of the 70% in the middle. This is who I think it's really important to wake up
Yes.
and give information about what you're talking about. And you've probably talked about some of this till you're blue in the face, but I need you to get a little bluer because I need you to fill in the blanks. I think what I'm hearing you say is that they'll both spark a riot, they'll go to a larger demonstration and embed themselves in a big group or a big movement and then get it to devolve into something that is a lot more destructive than it would have been otherwise. My question to you when I say, who are these people? You say they're mostly young people. When they get up the next day, they go do this, they go throw bricks through windows, they start fires, they burn cars, they turn them over, they attack people, and they might do it with 30 people or 130 people, depending on their investment in that cause. When they get up the next morning, where do they go? What are their jobs? Who are these people? How are they absorbed back into society when they're not wearing their black disguises? Where do we find these people? Where are they during the day, during the week, when they're not out creating havoc?
Great question. So in Portland at the time, I did public records requests of the people who were arrested night after night. Some nights there were 30 people being arrested a night, and I would request all the names, the mugshots, and the charges. And then I would systematically try to look through age, educational background, race, anything I could find. Well, what's their social media posting? Unsurprisingly, a lot of their social media accounts had Antifa propaganda on it in terms of identifying themselves with the movement through the use of some of these symbols. Your listeners can think of Antifa as a gang, as an informal gang that one can self-identify with. And the danger of that is it's similar in a way to ISIS or some of these jihadist groups that have carried out terrorist attacks. You don't have to have been somebody, for example, who have traveled to Syria or Iraq to become a formal ISIS member. You can follow the propaganda that's online, watch the videos, read the materials, and pledge allegiance to the ideology and carry it out and attack, either as an individual or connected to a local cell, for example. Antifa's ideology is similar in that type of way. So who are they? Well, they actually span the full spectrum of society. There's a misconception that, because if you look at some of the mugshots, some of them look dirty, and some people assume, oh, they're just crazy homeless people who have been drawn into violence. Well, there are people who are represented in white-collar professions, academics, university students, PhD students, people who work in healthcare. Unfortunately, there were a lot of nurses and those who worked in medical settings who were arrested in 2020. And then you had some people, yes. And then you had also those who were chronically unemployed, living on public assistance. And during 2020, rioting became a full-time hobby or profession for a lot of these people who were on public assistance, getting funds through the state, and at night going out to riot. Unfortunately, we have a lot of leadership at these universities who have waited it out and or also have negotiated with them and given the occupiers everything they wanted. For example, at University of Washington, that had one of the longest encampments at 3 weeks. It was very violent. The university president there announced that the occupiers have agreed to voluntarily remove themselves. The university will not pursue any conduct violations for anybody who's a student, and will also not pursue justice through the criminal justice system. So they've been able to enact all this violence for 3 weeks and vandalism and threats in Seattle, and they got away with it. Very similarly in Portland as well, with the besieging of the library, the largest library in one of the largest research universities in the state of Oregon. For 4.5 days, the president allowed it, and they destroyed that library. That library is out of commission now, all the way until the fall term. And the estimates that it can be up to $1 million in damages. And I just ask, I would ask these people, like, for what? But I already know the answer. The violence and the destruction is the what.
Yeah. And what's the answer?
There's not a simple answer. The immediate things that can be done is to vote out district attorneys who are not willing to uphold the law.
They're going to lift the suspensions and put these kids back in school.
They are. They're also giving the occupiers what they want, which is divesting from Israel.
They sold out.
There's a reason why people say don't negotiate with terrorists. Because when you show that you're willing to give into those tactics, it's going to be used again. That's what happened with the riots before. It's going to happen again with the student extremism on campus. And it's, as you mentioned earlier, it's not just students who are involved. You have a small group of really radical students who work hand in hand with outside professional agitators. And they should be expelled. But very few were suspended. The few who were are going to be having the suspensions removed. And so we'll have more political violence and extremism on campuses. It's going to spill out into the public. The network's already there, the organizations, the nonprofits, the funding streams, the tactics that they use.
Well, it is frustrating to me, as I know it is to you, but you and I just have to keep absolutely beating the drum. I really worry about you. You've been practically beat to death twice. I know you're taking care and caution now, but you're no good to us if you're not here. So you got to take care of yourself and get security around you and take care and be careful. And I know you don't let people know where you are most of the time, true?
That's true. I've had to relocate outside of the U.S. because of the death threats against me, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask you where you are. I'll let you keep that to yourself and stay on the move. We're going to have to stop, but I could talk to you for 2 more hours. But listen, Andy's book is Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. And as he has today, I think in very understandable ways, he pulls the curtain back in this book and provides insight as to who these people are and what their agenda is. This is something that we can't turn a blind eye to just because it may not be impacting your life directly in the moment. This is organized. There's a plan. This is chess, not checkers. They've got a plan for taking down this country from the inside out because they think they've got a better plan. The problem is their plan has been tried, and we got lots of corpses around this world to prove it doesn't work. But by the time people figure that out, it'll be too late. So we're trying to sound the warning bells about this stuff, him in his way, me in mine. But Andy, I hope we can keep this dialogue going and help each other keep our message getting out there. So I hope we can talk some more in the future. Again, the book is Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. I've read it. You need to read it. I highly recommend it. It's also very entertaining. It's a page turner. You'll read this in very short order, and you'll be a lot better informed for it. Andy, I appreciate you taking time to talk to us today.
Dr. Phil, thank you so much, and thank you for informing your listeners and viewers about how important this subject is. I'm so thankful for that.
We'll stay in touch, and if you need anything we can help you get the word out on, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just stay in touch. Fair enough?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Phil.
All right. Stay safe, man.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.